So what's new in Beit HaMidrash Below Chidush? So it turns out that I got hold of a siddur called Bracha Tehillah that was put out by the Hasidim of Reb Arle.
Of what? I'm sorry.
Reb Arle wrote the Shomer Amunim that you want to hit the hot rod of the Haredi world. But my interest in those people has been because of the sophistication that they have about devotion. There was Reb Arle Roth, who, although he would have wanted every mitzvah to be kept, exactly, was telling us also that there are 32 mitzvahs he can just do with a moment of consciousness. Well, that's great stuff, right? So I was interested in him, and the people do very strong davening. So we just, I don't know if I showed you. Did I show you the book that I did with Hillel?
You showed us the pre-copy.
All right. I have some copies now of that. We'll do that business later, okay? So where was I?
About
32.
32 mitzvot.
Yeah.
The kavanah and the
Yeah.
davening.
So because he is so very given, he lives in that world. And the hard thing is always, in how will I express in words the vibration on which this conversation should take place? That's, how do you get there to that place? So when you hear the way in which he talks about davening, about serving God, about, if you will, the holy mind control, most of the time we find hands and body control in Shulchan Aruch, but here somebody who's coming with mind and mood and consciousness control. So I was very excited about him. So he had a son and a son-in-law, and most of the Hasidim stayed with the son-in-law. And then both of them passed on now too, and so now there are 3 generations of Reb Arle, each of which has a different nuance about them. And some things they do together, some things they don't. One of the branches has done a beautiful job of collecting for the weekday davening, quoting Reb Arle, who said, my thing is to help people be metakein the weekday davening.
That's your latest thing.
Yeah, so I tell you, what's so interesting is to find that he's saying this at this point, that if you get into the wording that he quotes here in the davening, and you ask, where is he? What is he doing with it? Very few of the people are going to take you into their, I really want to put this on it. Back to here.
Thank you. I'd like to go back.
8:30, I think.
I think I once told you that story. Oh, you're finished?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think I once told you the story about that Farbrengen that happened in New York. But even if I did, I'll tell it again, okay? There sit the 3 mashpiyim at the table. People who teach us chassidus, and they're sort of the spirituality coaches, old-timers, and there's schnapps on the table, and they're talking, and one of them says, those boys today, I'm going to mimic him, die Bocherim hain, the davening need, He keeps saying that davening isn't real davening, he just puts us down. So I had a chutzpah and took a schnapps, and I said to him, Reb Shmuel, how do you expect us to be able to daven better when you never tell us what happens inside of you when you daven? Okay. What a chutzpah,
How old were you?
I got a blast, huh?
How old were you?
18. I got such a blast, it was from him. He says, then he looks at me, he says, turns to the other one, to Jacobson, and says, after all, he's in your group. You answer him. So Jacobson is going around, and he gets Bruegges, saying, so many years I've been working my spirituality, and it took me so and so much, and I'm working very hard still at it, and you want me to give it to you? And I come and I say, yeah, because Torah hier limit ani tzorich, and he refuses. And Rabbi Paris, who was the third one there, says, is doch aber fortgerecht. After all, he is right, he says to them. So the two of them shoot at him, say, then you say, okay? So,
You know, you hit the
huh?
hot spot.
Yeah, now Rabbi Paris can't get out of it, okay? And he takes a schnapps and says, Alachaim, and he starts with us with Birchot HaShachar. So much of what I would be saying is the source of Davanology for me is to hear how he was talking about being in touch with the body and going from there and describing every form of things that are in the Tehillim of Psuke de Zimra in the most midrashic technicolor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know what I mean, but when somebody says the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, and I ask you, what's your inner movie showing? What's the background? You know, what do you see? So each one of us brings something to it. Somebody would bring music, shepherds sing, and so on. So we'd have pictures. I've been ever since. What was his name? No, the one with the elephant and the frame.
The elephant in the frame.
Huh?
You don't mean out of The Little Prince, do you?
No.
Okay.
No. The book that showed us how come we lost to the Republicans.
George Lakoff.
Lakoff, okay.
The old.
To get him out.
We try.
So ever since I read this book, I've been asking myself questions. How I cannot really understand what I'm doing with my consciousness unless I examine which frame I'm working under. And at one point, people couldn't get out of their own frame, so they didn't see it. Okay?
It's hard work.
So you have to have at least several frames from which you can see frames, right? So it's good to be able to, how would I put it? Almost like saying, insinuate yourself in a consciousness of that other person in that other frame. What would that be like? What would it be like if you were, let's say, right now coming down, a good evangelical Christian, and he would come down and he would see us sitting around this. What would go on in his head, which would be different than what goes on in our head. So all this has to do with frame, and I'm asking, what's the frame of halacha?
Right.
And I asked, and I saw that the frame of halacha often is malefides. What do I mean to say?
What does that mean?
The opposite of bona fides, you know, having trust in, having faith in, you know. And if I say it's going to work out, I have faith in, that's bona fides. If I say they'll fuck up every time,
Don't have
you know,
faith, yeah.
right? So there is a certain malefides attitude that says, if you don't put a siyog, if you don't do this, if you don't do that, you know, people will not observe, and so we have to build and build defenses upon defenses upon defenses. And if you have an understanding now from psychotherapy, what it would be like to look at all the defenses that go into, let us say, tearing toilet paper on Shabbos. Yeah?
Right.
That range of things. So for some people to be able to say, I want to see is there another way in which I could look at halacha?
This is reminding me of a group that's happened actually at the first Spirituality Institute for rabbis. And Art Green sat with us for 3 hours and went through Shacharit and talked about exactly this, how he davened every morning.
Mm-hmm.
And the things he skipped, the things he couldn't stand, the things he loved and poured his heart into, how he read certain phrases and what he... I still have a sitter all marked up with. It was, I think out of the whole 2-year program, that's what everybody was riveted, because it wasn't even what he said, it was the frame of how he saw it, how he gave himself permission to discard or put things in or to insinuate into the text certain meanings, and it was the reshut he gave himself and how he related to it that was, everybody walked away like on a different level.
It's an awareness of your own attunement, which often is hard to give over. But that's precisely what happens at times when you stay in touch with it as you try to give it over. Not
When you think about the whole concept of davenology, so you go back, for those of us who grew up in a traditional setting of some sort, so the external that comes to bear is being Yotzei, all right? And that enters into the consciousness. And until you can somehow internalize the Yotzei concept.
this is too good, this stuff. Wait a minute.
Hold on.
Settle down. We're in the middle of something good.
No, but
Your honey there?
she's coming, but she's,
She's not
You can
here.
sit over here.
Oh,
I know, it's
He'll
tough
never
couch.
come, right?
Everybody knows this one already.
Yeah.
lose the coat if you're sitting next to me. Anyway,
So how, I have now a big shiloh to you, okay? We have now experienced how you can go from the sublime to the ridiculous.
Right.
I now would like to know if anybody has a suggestion how we can go from the ridiculous to the sublime again.
Victor, go ahead.
take a breath.
so, I mean, I learned to daven by the numbers, all right? And it was a lockstep thing. And when I finished all those things, then I knew externally I was Yotzei. Now, what was Yotzei at that time to me? The halacha, all right? And therefore I satisfied the external demands. If it was min hashamayim, I don't remember what I thought. It just felt that I fulfilled my Hiyyuv for that morning or whatever.
Just a moment. What's his name? Now the name escapes me. He was the head of Bar Ilan. No, me and you.
Just a minute. I did a wedding with him in the 60s.
Manuel Rackman.
Manuel Rackman, yeah.
So he says this thing.
Yep.
Yatsa Yedei Chovato. He extricated himself from the grasp of obligation.
Ooh. Ooh.
Isn't that great?
That,
He extricated himself from the grasp
Wow.
of obligation. And that's what you were describing.
yeah. Now,
Just a moment, give Ed.
The same thing happens in psychology. I just wrote a letter to a man in Italy, and I told him, in light of his article, you got to get out of the box. He was interpreting psychoanalysis from a transactional analysis point of view, and he was commenting upon a psychoanalyst who was commenting upon transactional analysis from a psychoanalytic point of view. I said, both of you got to get out of the box. And I suggested a meta model, so that, as Eric Byrne used to say, if you come from the outer world, from Mars, you get a different perspective. And that's what you're talking about.
Mhm.
basically. And
Frames
it has
and
to
all
do
that.
not only in religion.
So I interrupted you with the Yotze.
no, but I will say that when I first read many years ago your article on davenology and realized that it was only potentially freeing at that moment, because the struggle is to overcome that external sense of obligation. And the obligation takes on many forms. It can be feel an obligation to, Knesset Yisrael or to God, whatever it may be. But Nadia and I went through so much guilt once we started breaking with that. What was it? Extricating ourselves from
The grasp of obligation.
a grasp of obligations. That's not easy to do. And then when you think about how you described Art doing his thing, he obviously overcame it a long time ago and is satisfied that makes him internally Yotzei. All right? But that's a long trip to take internally, spiritually.
So when you're reframing the idea of a marriage, are you throwing your marriage out the window, or are you creating a new frame?
Well, that's what you're doing.
So I'm worried about that term extricating, because it would be so easy to use it to justify getting away from
divorce.
responsibility.
It would justify
And
a
commitment.
divorce. But
Yeah.
I remember when Alan Green first taught Nadia and me to meditate. I was a terrible meditator. I just couldn't do it. So I found myself, we were living in a rural area, and every morning I would get up and I'd go out on the balcony and I would look at these two mountaintops, and I'd go into this very soft place, and I did it every day. But I felt like a miserable meditator until I met Sylvia. Right? And I told her of my problem, and she started laughing. She says, that's a Japanese meditation. They meditate on two mountaintops, and it's fine. You keep your eyes open, don't you? I said, yeah, that's why I thought it was a problem. She says, no, I forget the name of it. It was a Japanese meditation. And I asked myself later, why was I worried about external verification that the process was right, when the product was exactly the same as Nadia sitting in the room and doing different forms of meditation?
Well, this happened at Ohala. Last Ohala, I assisted somebody doing a mincha. Names not important, and she did a beautiful mincha in a circle. Everybody basically dancing it, and she did the ashrei, and she did the going into the amida, and everyone took space. Afterward, it was very beautiful and very touching. Afterwards, a conservative rabbi who was first time at Ohala, he actually, and again, names aren't important, went into a fit. Like, he said, that was mincha? How am I supposed to be Yotzei with that? Like, what? How? And he just was fuming, like, wait a minute, this was my mincha time. I'm not Yotzei. And everybody was standing around a little bit dumbfounded, like, but that was mincha. Wait a minute. And so how could he cross the barrier that he was at, not having fulfilled all the ashrei, just the first, And that's, I think, something that's the hedge that we have to, in renewal, I think, help people explain to themselves or to.
This is such a delicious conversation. I wanted to continue. So let's go and explore this a little bit, just as you're saying.
Can I ask something about this? I obviously came in the middle here, but I'm fascinated as somebody who, I don't know if I spent any time in that world of doing it for an external reason. I wonder if there is a value to it. Still, is there a value to doing certain practices, mitzvot, whatever you want to call it, not for an internal reason, because this helps me be more centered, more connected, more whatever, but because of an external? Is there some value to that? I mean, traditionally, obviously, there is. But I'm wondering, for us, is there still a value sometimes to doing certain things, not because it's for our own spiritual fulfillment, but because something Jews do or whatever?
I think so, because I came from probably closer to your thing. I came from classical reform background, and as I added things, especially when I was a Hill director working with Orthodox kids, I was adding things too, rather than deciding what to subtract. And in the beginning, some things weren't hitting me here. There had to be sort of a spiritual muscle memory to it that wasn't there in the beginning. And as I added to it, and as it stayed with me for a while, because I would pick this and I'd pick that and I'd pick that, at first willy-nilly and then with some study, and I'd pick something, I'd add it and say, okay, I'm going to do this, and it didn't hit me that it was powerful inside for a while.
You sound like Rosenzweig's Not Yet.
Yeah, very much, because eventually, it's like the story you tell about the person who said, who asked you a question about prayer. He says, I want to do it, but it doesn't touch me. Can I say Lou, before the prayer? And eventually, some stayed, and I had my own internal diagnostics going on.
So then my assumption is then you make it, then you don't keep doing it because it's an external Hiyyuv.
It moves in.
You keep doing it because it eventually becomes an internal one.
So
you're saying the value is, if you try some of this stuff,
for a while,
it may become.
Yeah.
Is there another value to doing things for external
Could
reasons?
I describe that a little? I came to the keva aspect rather later in life. I had always prayed from kavana. As I started to learn the structure of prayer, for me it was like developing the endoskeleton way of approaching it. And what you were describing, I would describe more as like an exoskeleton, where you're kind of, you have to do it from without. As I developed the keva, I developed a skeleton in which I could pray in ways more than I had prayed before, and on behalf of things that I wouldn't have thought to pray before. But I have the freedom, because it's an internal skeleton, of more flexibility. Each time I do the series of prayers involved, I pray them fresh, as opposed to just a very, very fixed set of lines. And so I have to start fresh each time, but I follow the format.
What's interesting, and taking it Lador Vador of the Kala theme, what I'm discovering working with, and with all kavod to smicha students here, there is a difference between the first generation of renewal rabbis and the current students. The first ones that you were involved with, a large number of them came out of traditional background. So they knew the matbeya. They may even have known kavanah. What they were looking for was that freeing, the ability to be creative. What we have now are students who are coming from renewal, from reform backgrounds, or no background. And so what their experience with davening is the more creative stuff that has now become the keva of renewal, right? And the majority of them, I'm finding in my discussions with them, are going back to experience the traditional davening experience. Whether we'll ever get them out of it, I don't know. But it's a fascinating reversal.
You sit in DLTI.
Every movement is dealing with that issue.
You've been fighting too much
The
lately.
newbies are coming in and they're doing what?
It's very obvious in the DLTI now that Meir and I participate in.
Yeah.
That we are given all the freedom in the world to create any service we want, really. And it's every session, if we have been in 3 sessions now, becomes more and more keva.
Yeah. But
It's
keva
very
with a lot
interesting
of-
to
a lot
watch.
of fire.
But it's
Yeah,
also,
with lots of fire and lots of enthusiasm, but keva.
It's also interesting to consider who's teaching it. So
Right.
For example, when I sit and daven with Marcia, Marcia many times will sit in a renewal service with an art scroll siddur and daven more than what is being done in the service. But just to go to a different place and where we're talking about the external things like that, I only knew the full Birkat Hamazon all through my childhood into the seminary's rabbinical school. it got to a point where I would avoid sitting at a table with two other people, all right? Because then I would be required to sit there and go through the entire Birkat HaMazon. I never knew of any other possibility except for the one, you know, in the morning, on Shabbos morning, when you didn't eat lechem, you had the shorter one. The first experience I ever had with a different Birkat HaMazon was the first Shabbos at Yehudit and Ruvain's house before we went to the Aquarian Minyan, and they sang the Hana Tiferet's. Yeah, and immediately I had I had a feeling and a thought. The thought was that I was still Yotzei.
Because you mentioned the three words.
That's right. And the feeling was of incredible liberation. All right? And I still, when I hear new ones, when Shefa, you know, when I encountered Shefa's different ones, I look to see if I'm still Yotzei by.
That's what I'm questioning is what's that moment of passing over the, you know, the Yetza Midei Chavato. How do you chop that? Because some people would say this is not Yotzei with these three words. What are we talking about here?
Let me tell you something about which criterion, but don't go into the question of what it is, but how it is.
How it is.
I have a longing. The longing is to be in harmony with the universe. This is how, that's my longing. To serve God, whichever way you language it, okay? I see certain kinds of behavior in myself that I think have something to do with that power, with that force. And so these kinds of behavior sort of gather themselves around to when I want to encounter that force. I also know that I'm lazy. And I know from the value point right now that I shouldn't miss it tomorrow morning. And the lazy one, he's going to get in the way. How can I anchor my intent so that my own internal adversary shouldn't be able to budge it? Okay? So I create a thing which is the pillar of Yotze. Get it? I'm saying don't get around it. There are boundaries, and this is the way in which you're going to do it, and you're Yotze. Now, this doesn't always happen consciously, but if you ask yourself, what's the process? That's the process. How did anyone keep going to when the external thing is, like you were describing, exoskeletal, so in the shtetl and so on. So the pressure came from without. But now if you ask, what is it that comes from within? So the best part of me wants to make sure that this will take hold of my personality, that I'll live on that basis. So it creates such a thing, which is the source of Nazirut. Can you follow me? Right? The sense that I say I will give up such and such, you know, and this is going to be such a no-no for me. So then comes in the question, how big a no-no? From 1 to 10. Okay. Because other things do interfere from time to time, so you have to find out, this is an absolute no-no. You get something like Lo Tirzah is connected with this kind of absolute no-no. So I'm saying, even if you don't go to a transpersonal place, you only go to the interior work of creating that system of Yotze, you get to see that it has to do with Neder and Nazirut. And this is very beautifully told by the Ishbitz. It goes like this. somebody who's battling the demon of schnapps can't understand if Chazer is treif, why is schnapps not treif? It is so much more hurtful to him, and he has to deal with that all the time. And if there is a good, wise God, he would have said, no schnapps for nobody. Lo to schnapps, you know?
Lo tishnapsu.
Yeah. So,
And some religions have.
I just want to keep coming back to the business of why do we do tzorach gavoha? Why do we invest time, energy, consciousness into the higher things? Because there's a sense that they exist, but we can't contact them unless we tune into them. For instance, if I could, and I could tune in to a malach. Let's find Refoil. I'd like to deal with Refoil today, okay? So how do I get in touch with Malach Refoil? I'm beginning to think of healing, cosmic force, you know. I don't think it's an old lady though with a nightshirt going around. So it's that force, it's that awareness of Refoil, of healing. And to that, there flows a Ana Elna Refonora chant. And what does this chant do? It stimulates. It says, Rafael, I have work to do for you. So I'm sending you to Davida with all the good wishes and all the power that we have over here, and with the schus of our learning together, so that you insinuate yourself into her system in such a way that that which is for living and for life and for goodness and for fulfillment here, that should become stronger.
Beautiful.
And that which blocks that should be starved of energy. Amen.
Amen.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Beautiful.
So you see, that is talking about tuning in to that consciousness in a sense. So,
Were you done with the Ishbitz piece? What was the teaching about the Neder and the Zirut?
yeah, so very good. Thank you. Thank you. So he says, for this alcoholic, when he gets into this place, and he said, God, why don't you make this forbidden? So God says, I tell you something. You need this right now. I give you the power that you should make it one of the mitzvahs, the oraisa, for yourself.
Oh, that's the
Ki
Zirut.
tidor neder la Hashem, right? You're tying your intent to the absolute. And you want to anchor it in that. Now, that's grabbing hold of you to the point that some point it'll say you haven't done it yet. That's not what you pledged to do. That's not what you intended to do. And so it comes with this. No. This is still what happens in our awareness, and it's not quite what is the response. The big question always is there somebody there? You know, we can do a very nice group delusion, you know, and say, well, so it's a question, do you see it, do you not see it, right? Okay, so that's the question is, at what level is of conversational sanity do we peg talk? Because if I could veer a little bit to the right or to the left and give you some insane talk about that. So anyway, so he says you have to be able to anchor it in such a way, and that's what the Neder is about. So the whole inyan of Nedorim is to create for yourself a Oraisa thing. Well, then you come back to who gives you the all of the Oraisa. You know? So what's your experience about that? Because how and when did you experience that there is something that is beyond your personal choice in this thing? And, you know, you had a day or something, an experience. Talk about it.
I've wrestled with this thing a long time. I don't daven, but I have gone through intense internal search. As Zalman knows, my wife was brain injured. After struggling for 4 years, she died. During which time I wrote a memoir of what it means to be a caregiver. And in that, I learned about myself. It wasn't about her. It's who I was. And in the same time, I struggled with my reform movement. And we were going through a new platform. Mm-hmm. And I wrote a very strong negative paper that was published in that regard. I come to a resolution from an epistemological point of view. What I hear keva and yotze, kavanah, I understand as process and content. It's a struggle in life of process and content. And it's like the proverbial elephant. People take hold of the certain part of the elephant and call it the entire elephant. And what I learned is that keva and kavanah are intertwined. You cannot escape one from the other. Some people will start from the kavanah point of view. Some people will start from the keva point of view. But inevitably, in terms of what you're speaking, Zalman, of consciousness, you have to ask the question, if it's from a keva point of view, where am I with it? And if you start with the kavanah point of view, you can be, you can go forever and ever and never live. Eventually you have to fix a point. But the question is, how steadfast is that point? And what I have come to the conclusion that has been helpful to me, that has synthesized my struggle and my point of view, is that the keva, it centers around the word certainty. Is there such a thing as a definite certainty and absolute? Or is it something that we believe to be certain and we proceed our lives upon that assumption? And I have come to the conclusion, if I try to aspire to a keva that is kavua instead of zmani, then I get into trouble. I have to live and face the issues as they come up and go inside of me and then make a decision. Once I make the decision, I have to go back inside of me. And I have to go round and round and round. And eventually, a certain synthesis, a certain pattern begins to evolve. And you say, well, that seems to be reasonable. And it's pragmatic. It works. I find comfort. I find satisfaction. And on top of it, I find that I can build a new life. So I say, that is my keva, but zmani. And at the same time, I go back and I say, hey, now I got a new insight. Something new comes. Hey, I'll try this. And it works. And I find satisfaction. And so what I'm struggling in this conversation today is that there's a miscarrot, a framework, that there is a goal of content that has to be achieved or struggled with, and
An external.
an external goal. And I'm not so sure that limits the discussion and the possibility of working out a reasonable, satisfying, emotionally satisfying resolution.
And if it were a black and white situation, an either or, then I would say I would choose for the kavanah over the keva. What would be the downside of choosing for kavanah? I don't know what I can depend on. But if I'm going to plan anything, like bringing a child into the world, like whatever, I have a certain achrayus. The achrayus, I don't know if it comes from the outside or from the inside, but I will not respect myself as a mensch if I go break this line. So somewhere I establish, even in my kavanah territory, a little bit of keva.
Of course.
Right?
Nice.
So now if you start looking at this from a scale of 0 to 10, you would say 10 keva would be impossible. I couldn't live that way. I'd much rather be dead than locked into this forever, to this keva. So you said the keva's money. That was an important part. It's not for, it doesn't last forever. The business of being not sure remains ultimately not answerable. That's where faith comes in. You can always accuse your consciousness to paint you a picture that will lessen the pain of existence. Yes, it can do that with from a very cynical place.
So the issue of faith enters deeply into the,
Cannot escape it.
yeah, but it enters into the kavanah area. The bedrock of emunah would be the keva. I mean, that's where it's either, well, there's a blurring of the distinction, all right? Traditionally, we have rested upon the emunah that the keva, to keep using these traditional frames, makes you yotze in relationship to Hashem and to yourself and to the people. The kavanah is the one that frees you, that releases you, but you need to play with whatever, with the idea of being faithful, all right? And that's where some of the inner work has to be done. Going back to your question, Tirzah, of what is it? Where's the line between yourself and the external, whatever that may be? It's like when Avram Sutton was here. He started out, the first sentence was, there's a mitzvah. All right? Well, so where does that, there's all sorts of proof text that the mitzvah has you in relationship to davening. All right? How do you deal with that and be authentic? And authentic to what? Is it just enough to be authentic to the self? Isn't that a little too much egoism involved in the art of davening? Right? Those are the things that you so beautifully put it, that these are the things you do the internal work about. All right? And is it just when you finish davening, a nice Jewish renewal style davening, is it enough to judge it by you feel good, you feel high? All right? Is that what you're looking for?
That's the question. Is it your goal?
Go a little slower here. Let's take mincha. Mincha is very, very good in this case. Because
Easy to work with.
It's in the middle.
It's shorter. It's good. It's shorter.
It's in the middle of the day. We are expected to make a jump from the world of Yetzirah right directly into Atzilut, And leolam yehi adam zayir b'tfilat mincha. Eliyahu Hanavi's fire doesn't come down except tfilat mincha. Mincha is very important. Mincha is the highest. Okay, good. somewhere deep down, the universe has made a demand. Es korboni lachmi leishai reach michochi tishmu lahakriv li b'moado. Okay? If you want to keep this God stuff going, there has to be a daily sacrifice being offered. Et hakeves ha'echad ta'aseh b'boker, v'et hakeves ha'sheni ta'aseh ben ha'arbaim. Kevesh is an interesting word because one of the a kvish, a highway, and kevesh on the mizbeach is a ramp on which you go up.
Nice.
You know,
Nice.
it's. So I'm seeing that there's such a fluctuation. If I look at steady state stuff, it's a different story. But you know, you sit at the computer sometimes and you edit out something from a sound file, and you can see how the sound waves keep on going, you know. And if I were to ask myself, when am I in the high mind, when am I in the low mind, and how many fluctuations are going on during the time, I could see him like on a screen, the ups and the downs that are happening. And here I have a problem. If I want more amplitude, I want more intensity. I want higher highs and so on and so forth. There's a cost involved. The lower lows. You know, that's how the fluctuations are going to go. Somebody may say, the highs that I get are worth all the lows that I have to live through. That's more yakarli mikol pnin. That I can be hooked into the mind of the planet and see how my mother, the earth, im habonim semecha, you know, and at the same time see how she hurts. And there feels such a sense that how beautiful it would be to keep giving back to that source of life something. And when do I want to do it? There's a going up in the morning place and there's a going up in the evening place. And that's the route from which you get later on. How do I do that? Well, if I no longer live in a world in which keves ha'echad is a sheep, then what does it become? It's a tefillah, you know, and tefillah keneged tamidim tiknum. And since we can't give a tamid, what's the tamid we can offer, which is our return to being hooked up with the universe, with the mind of the universe, is just to offer something back. So the question now comes, did this happen or did it not happen? If I get to the place that it did happen, I was Yosef. If I get to the place it didn't happen, then I wasn't Yosef. So there is still an inner judgment about did it happen. You want to say something about that?
Yeah, the way I see it, the sacrifice is to return to the internal world and the world of God. This is the world of Adam before the fall. And the sacrifice is the external world. And by perfecting the knowing, we become Yotzi, and we fulfill our destiny, and we're co-creators with God in healing.
So what's the key moment? Say it again. And the key moment in being Yotze
is to be internalized and be with God. And know it. So
but you were not before in that place.
We were
right?
Externalized.
Yeah. And therefore, coming in from the external, you know, is going out from the external. So in that sense of being Yotze, nice story. Reb Hershel Rimenova is about to die. So his chassidim stand around always. The last message is so important. So there's a Mishnah in Brachas which goes like this: Hashote mayim b'tzamo mevorech Shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. Begins with Ketzat mevorchim al haperot, what blessings do you make, and so on and so forth. Ve'al kulam, im omar shehakol niyeh b'dvaro, yatsa. Okay? Which is a very nice end of the mission. So now the Rebbe is leaning back, and he's ready to give up his neshama. And he says, Ve'al kulam. My whole life, I look back. Im Amar, im Kiven Libo. If you felt it, if you were aware during the time, Yatsa.
And then he gets up.
And he's gone.
That's beautiful.
Right. So
Beautiful,
you get the sense that there is. Eve is telling people an interesting story these days about. At a time when Sheba no longer could function, somebody gets a telephone message over the phone. Another telephone message has been received
Amazing.
by someone else saying, "I'm having a barrel of fun."
Such a great time.
Yeah. So you get the idea. There is a sense of being able to say that you're finished with your geschäft that you have to work out, and somebody gives you yasher koach for a job well done. Saying goodbye, you want to have a few years in Gan Eden, good. We have a special Gan Eden, but that special Gan Eden you can't get into unless you have a little Gehenna to get rid of some stuff. And I see the whole thing as dynamic between what we affirm and what we doubt, what we affirm, what we doubt. And I want to say that the place of choice is where I decide that I want to stay on the side of faith more than on the side of doubt, but I don't want to be absolutely there, because with faith there sneaks in a lot of superstition. So I need to have a superstition filter there too.
We also need a doubt suppressor, because with more and more faith,
Yeah.
doubt creeps in. It's like sin crouching at the door.
Yeah.
All right?
So you can't do without somehow having some discrimination,
Right.
some way of being able of discernment. That's what they keep calling.
There's that beautiful Lishpitzer on Bechuchutai, which says Im Bechuchutai Telechu, it says Im Lashon Safek,
Yeah.
and the way I read that is that really some kind of Safek in the right context is really important, because I think that certainty, absolute certainty, is much more dangerous than doubt. We see it. We saw it yesterday. I mean, I'm sure that Israeli soldier who killed those, I mean, I'm sure he had absolute certainty, suicide bombers, whatever, they have absolute certainty. It's very dangerous. But to have that constant checking ourselves with the safek, is this, Ratzon Hashem Yitbarach, or is it not Ratzon Hashem Yitbarach? How can I really know? I can just live my life as if it is, that ke'ilu, it is, but really, I don't know. Who am I to really know what God's will is?
But then there is a commitment. It's always called self. Whether you do it or not depends on that inner final moment that says, either I surrender, I can't help it, or I embrace it.
Right.
But and all this is in percentages. I don't see it in clear black and white. I could say up
In
to
extremes.
In
the extremes.
Yeah.
I was just a few days ago reading there was it happened in Yerecho. Rabbi Akiva and the other Chachamim were there. They were eating dates, and they finished eating the dates, and Rabban Gamliel said you have to do a full birkat. And Rabbi Akiva said the majority had already decided that you don't. All right? So obviously it was a power struggle. But when I was reading it, it struck me that what you were talking about, if I mean, anyone who has eaten a date from Yerecho know that the tom of it is very, very special. It's not a question of whether you're obligated or not to say a full birkat. It's how you relate to the sensate experience of that moment, the high of eating one of those dates. And it was very funny because it was obvious from what I was reading that Rabbi Akiva was right. But for all I knew, Rabban Gamliel found the date to be so exquisite that it deserved a full Birkat Hamazon, irrespective of what the Rov Acharei Rabim went told. Right? And that's a...
See, that brings us to the think of devotion. There is a point when I'm engaged in an act that absolutely gets me back no payment in this world, okay? And I'm still engaged in this act of devotion because that being that I'm in touch with when my eyes don't see, my ears don't hear, but I'm still in touch with that being. And I want to offer this like a poor gift. Tikar shirat rash beinecha kashir yishar al kol banecha, you know. Accept this song of mine. It's a song of a poor man, but let it be just like a sacrifice being offered to you. So that element of wanting to give, you know. Ma ashiv ladonai kol tag molohi alai. What can I give back to the Rebbeinu Shalom? And that sense, I think, takes the issue of Hiyyuv and Yotze and turns it around into devotion. And devotion can't be without my wanting to give it. If I don't want to give it, then I can be Yotze, you know, giving someone so much. I've extricated myself from the grasp of obligation. But if I want to give, often I get into a situation I wish I had more to give, you know. There's that feeling, that generosity. So that we have taken you must be Yotze and turned it around. What are the opportunities for generosity that are there? You know, and then I can even go to the business of not ripping toilet paper on Shabbos and preparing beforehand. Because when I go back to the time in my life when I lived that way, I had the sense, in Rebbeinu Shalom, it's Erev Shabbos, I'm going to go now and do the next part of preparation for Shabbos Zoches, Yom Shabbos Lekache, ripping toilet paper, you know. But it was very much still what my connection was. So what a difference it turns out when you can say, let not look at Hiyyuv, look at the opportunity for devotion that you had and how you used them. Does that feel so different than says, oh, I want to give more, you know?
That's why I like Leila Berner's translation of Vikit Shanu. She says, opportunities for holiness.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So mitzvotav, you know, the whole thing.
Graced
Well,
us with
the
that.
word mitzvah too. You know, mitzvah
Yeah.
can mean
Right.
the sacred connection.
A
So
mitzvah is an opportunity for
So it's the
holiness.
opportunity for a sacred connection,
Right.
and it changes the whole need. I have this feeling that we're all talking about process, and because process is the key to this, that the keva that we talk about might be in general terms. You know, we can come up with a keva that's in general terms, but the specifics have to be our own process through it. And each one's going to come up with something different. But the framework is nice. The framework of the keva is nice. It's almost like having a kitzur something, a kitzur shulchan aruch, a kitzur something, where we say, this is I take this one-liner that explains the general principle, and now I want to take it and I'm going to interpret it and see how it works, and how I can elevate myself and be more filled with devotion through it.
I mean, that works on a personal level.
Yeah.
On a communal level, it becomes a little more difficult. We had this experience once in the Aquarian Minyan. We were concluding the Shabbos Shacharit, and Nadia, she skipped the Oleinu. So somebody said, we need an Oleinu. What this person meant was, I need an Oleinu. Nadia's response was, collectively, we do not need an Oleinu. all right? And it came back and forth, you know? And I'm sitting there, and you're, the way you put it, you know, having a very broad keva. And so communally what the need is really problematic,
Sure.
all right? And it's a heavy obligation for the rabbi to fulfill everybody's need, right? Forget it. All right?
What was the Ricky Nelson song? You can't please everyone, so you might as well please yourself.
I think it was referencing something.
It's been a while since I've done renewal, but the bit of renewal keva that I love and still use, but in a different way, is going, you know, from Asiya to Atzilut and back to Asiya. I mean, that's sort of become its own keva in a sense in the renewal world, hasn't it?
Let me tell you something about a certain kind of keva that I dreamed in, but didn't happen as a reality, which was when I was hoping for a urban monastic kibbutz, a Jewish urban monastic kibbutz. Urban because we need to make a living. I mean, the best thing that we can do is be active in Sochet Tzibur Shel Emunah. So this one will be a rabbi, this one a shochet, whatever is necessary in the kahal. And if you come, we will be coming from such a place that will lift up the kahal with that too. So that's one of the things we're going to do. The other thing, we're going to do some spiritual work. 7 years of the Shemitah. Each year we're going to daven a different nusach. So that we would become the container for Yemenite davening, because we do a whole year. Another year for a Hasidischen daven, another one for the Rhineland Yeke daven, another one for the Italian, you know. So that
you have
6
more
months.
time in that year. Yeah.
You know, so, but I'm saying, could you imagine what that would do for people's sense of what are the outlines of Yotze?
The leap year.
You know, when you've made such a journey, and in the 7th year, the sabbatical year, we would daven the nusach that would grow out of our 6 years together.
Nice.
Where do we sign up?
Next time I get born again, I hope Balabais, I have competition soon.
There's a professor.
But let me finish this, because there are some more attributes to that. Also, each one of the people, and this business of having to be the person who embodies this particular derech. Wonderful music. So the person who embodies this nusach also embodies a certain kind of spirituality. So this one was just like you have in Fahrenheit 451, that book was in my head, that each one, you know, you have to have a living person do it, because a book alone isn't enough, okay? But this was important. And so our 24 hours would be spent 8 hours on Avodat Hashem, that's the davening, the learning, the things that we do together, the chanting, everything. 8 hours for Tzorchei HaGuf, and 8 hours for working in the world. And so I had it all set and ready. So if someone would come and say, I read about those Baba V'Chasidim, is there anybody who embodies that? And be able to say, Brother Yaakov embodies that one, and you go to that one, and he can take you into Baba. Oh, you know?
That's great.
So that was part of that dream. And that we would have small cells this way. And that was based on the Dead Sea Scrolls that were at that point found in Qumran, so that turned me on to this whole Jewish monastic life. And I published it in Judaism magazine. It was in '62 or something like that. And I got back one letter saying that'll never happen.
One letter?
Yeah. And then Yochimovs and I once had a wonderful vikuach about it, you know, whether that should be or should not be. And my argument was that if you have a good core, then the rest of it can be alive. But if the core dies away, the rest of it on the outside dies away, and we need to have a good core. And that was part of the vision. So the question would come up from time to time, why couldn't it happen? Because of the prior needs that were around at that time. I'm thinking back when Rabbi Daniel got smicha, because there was already a slot for him open of work that he was to do. And so it went with Lim Gottlieb. It was the same kind of a situation, that there was somebody who was ready, who needed to go out into the world and so on. But then there was this kind of a slot already waiting for her. And that need was around for those things, so that you couldn't say, couldn't we all stay together for a few years and embody this thing, and then we get other people, and then you move on. But I think that we were so in need of all the other things that needed to be done that became first. Going to Ramah, I'm asking myself the question, what might I do this summer that'll give me some members in the future for Qumran USA? You have to begin someplace, right? This isn't gonna happen so overnight. So these are the things, the Hillel Institutes and those Ramah years and all that wonderful experimentation to try and find out what is it that will initiate that sense of Lecha Ezbach Zevach Toda V'Shem Hashem Ekra. And I want to say, today I'm especially in a high place because it was also the Yortzeit of Aaron HaKohen. And I don't know if you've ever been in Yerushalayim on the 1st of Av. You go to the Ohel, there's a sea of 6-7 rows across the Ohel, across the Kotel, of Kohanim who are waiting to do Birchat Kohanim. And I was saying, this is our Jewish Orbis et Urbi, blessing that goes out to the whole world. Such an amazing thing. So I once was there on Aleph Av. It was very powerful. I want to read you something about the Musaf, because I certainly don't daven the old Musaf anymore. So what Musaf do I daven on Rosh Chodesh? So here I read it to you, and if you want copies, we can make it. Rashei Hadashim le'amcha natata. These were the kind of what I call the changes that were the Teflon changes, not too abrasive changes. Rashei Hadashim le'amcha natata, leshinui veset, leyamim vedamim, zman hitchachut lechol toldotam, bihiyotam mitkarvim elecha, and that the issue of korban and devotion coming in, getting close. Bitfila uvetshuva. ואהבה עזה לכפר באדם, זיכרון לכולם יהיו, תשועת נפשם מיד שונא, מזבח חדש בציון תכין, ועליות ראש חודש נע לאליו, עליו, ושירי ידידות נשירו ברצון, ובעבודת בית המקדש נשמח כולנו, ושירי דוד עבדיך נשמעים בעיריך, האמורים בלשונות רבים בבית התפילה לכל העמים, אהבת עולם תביא לכולנו, וברית הורים לבנינו ולבנותינו תזכור, ואבינו לציוניך ברינה ולשליים בית מקדש, ושם נעשה ונתקרב אליך באהבה כמצוות רצונך. ועל ידי עבדיך הנביאים כתוב לאמור, והיה מדי חודש בחודשו, מדי שבת בשבתו יבוא כל בשר, להשתחוות לפני, אמר השם, and then Elokeinu v'Elokei Orinu Chadesh Eloinu Ta Chodesh Hazeh. So that section that dealt with the Korbanot was changed into that.
You can still do the Kriya of the Korbanot on Rosh Chodesh.
I tell you what, that's a good question. I didn't have the option at any time. But for instance, I have some years that I haven't been reading about Hagar and Sarah and this whole business of Ishmael, but gone to Nitzavim.
You mean Yakeda?
Huh?
mean the Akedah.
The preface to the Akedah, then the Akedah that comes the second day. Sometimes I would read the Parshat HaTshuva, you know, something that people, if people were to read Torah every week and were onto it, then I would say then we stay with those kriyas. But there are some things that speak more directly. These are the kinds of Vayayim Shamor, whatever. There's so many wonderful passages instead.
That's
I,
it.
So what do you read
free.
on Mincha of Yom Kippur?
Yonah.
I tell you, this is Davke that I would keep.
Really?
Yeah.
Because
I
many
wanna-
people in the conservative movement read from Kedoshim
Well,
rather
In-
from Achrei rather than reading.
you can go. You can. I'm saying the business of.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have every year to be the same thing either. That's
Right.
where I stand. But you see now this whole business comes back. How are we yotze,
Exactly.
right? Are we yotze
That's
if we read what is muskam by everybody,
That's
or,
right.
or
What
are we
makes it
yotze
Yotze?
when we want to make sure that the Torah reading will touch neshamas?
Last
David Lazar's Kehillah in Tel Aviv, they're doing the one of a few kehillot in the world that are doing the Bavel triennial cycle. So they're just finishing Bereshit at the moment. I mean, they're reading the whole Torah over 3 years from beginning to end, and really going into such depth with it. So they're on a completely different cycle to the rest of the world.
Yeah, so on the high holidays they do.
Oh no, the high holidays, I guess they do.
Pass this around.
Last year, for the first time, I crossed the line and gave myself a shoot to read out of what's the parsha? It's, you know, when Yosef Lohitape, you know, Yosef coming and making reconciliation with the brothers. Is that in Miketz?
Vayigash.
Or Vayigash, and it was so like scary for me to do that instead of. But it was so powerful for people because it was like everyone was crying. It was like it was about
When did you?
on Yom Kippur. It was amazing. It was, but it really took a line for me to cross. Like, how do I give myself permission to do that?
Well, where is the restriction for you? I mean,
It's from my background. I mean, it's like, how dare you? Like, the whole world is
Where
doing
we
this, and you're
started
doing
from.
that.
The external obligation.
That's right.
Can I ask?
But you have the same thing, right?
Tirzah,
Yeah.
Give it up.
You know, and
I have
that's
it
so
more than
good.
you. I mean, I don't have the from background like you do, but I have the movement.
Just
The movement
on
holding
for,
you down,
Hold on
yeah.
for a moment,
Yeah.
okay? If I were to now want to install the consensus of these people here as to how we approach Ratzon Hashem, okay? I find myself giving each one of you full permission to do this with me and with association with me. Pass this on, okay? So that's like saying to create this kind of consensus that is always what's on the bottom of halacha, to be able to say that. And what is so freeing is to know the range of where we each are, that to say within these parameters we are good Jews. And that's how we want to recalibrate ourselves, you know, the compass by which we're going to steer. So, are you masking that everybody here, whatever your psak is going to be, that we will honor that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yikes.
So, I don't think, you know, if I ask myself, what did we do just now? I think Yavne b'chachamea, the Kerem b'Yavne attitude of being able to say all of us see each other as chaverim, and it's our obligation to declare what the halacha will be from this time. Yasher koyach.
And the thing is,
Take that to
the thing is
next
the
Friday
covenant.
morning's meeting.
Well, what brings me back to the beginning is
Be aggressive here.
the kavanah embedded in. I mean, the thing is, you're not just talking to anybody here; you're talking to rabbis, and the kavanah we would bring to the choice to use the Yosef text is sufficient. It's like, duh.
It is?
Yeah.
See, I still have this huge,
I'm
all my
sure.
brothers and uncles, and like, you call yourself a rabbi?
We
Like,
changed it. I think
so
my
strong.
second.
It'll be there forever, I'm sure.
I think my second year in Denver, we switched to the Kadoshim text on Yom Kippur, and I was so worried about, can we do this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, are you kidding? It's like, what are they? It's like they're thrilled. It's not just what do they care.
It's not like you're reading the Bhagavad Gita
I
or
wrestled.
something.
I wrestled with that.
A, they don't.
That's an idea.
But,
You gotta see that name.
I mean,
But they're thrilled to find something. I mean, just to give them something different wakes them up.
and
That's right.
substantive. But you know, there's another. I won't mention the name, but being at a rabbi's house on Friday night, an Orthodox rabbi, and I was asked to do the Kiddush, and because I changed the wording, im, instead of me, when I finished the chanting of the Kiddush, this rabbi then did the Kiddush over again. And I really checked in really quickly with my anger. And I understood from his position the issue of Yotze. From my position, I really felt like I was a mistaken child, or a child of mistakes. And it really bothered me, and had nothing to do with him. It went back into that past experience.
So if you can watch, I mean, that's what my teacher, I've been studying for years with one of Edwin Friedman's Hasidim, family system stuff, and what he always reminds me is, can you watch your reactions? That's where the deepest learning is. Not in anything you're saying or whatever. It's like, can you watch what's going on for you? I have to say, I got to read recently a chapter from Barry Holtz's book, Finding Your Way, I think is the title of it. And the third or fourth chapter, I wish I could remember the title of it, but it's this whole discussion about davening and keva and kavanah and how can modern liberal Jews wrestle with this in a lot of different ways. Fabulous article, fabulous chapter. Just this one chapter out of the book is worth it. I'm sure the rest of the book could too with this. And
What's the book?
Finding Our Way.
Yeah.
I think Finding Your Way. Barry Holtz.
Just reissued. It's an old book.
I think you would really like it. He brings in lots of text. It's really, really well done. And at one point in there, he broke through for me this whole Keva Kavanah issue by saying it's a false dichotomy. And we're reading the Talmud too linearly if we think of it as this thing. And it's so funny because that text was the text we were discussing in a class a week or so ago. And I also had in my mind an exercise I learned from Jeff Shine that I've always loved, but now I got a problem with it. He does a sort of a sociogram model. He says, Keva is at this end of the room, Kavanah is at this end of the room when you're having a discussion about tefillah. So you talk about those issues, and then you tell people, please get up and stand on the line where you are what you would prefer. And what happened between this article and some of the discussion for me was I couldn't answer the question anymore that way. Because I can pack a lot of kavanah into the keva. And to me, that's the trick. I mean, if you're seeing it linearly, then you don't get it. It's not about, do you like keva, do you like kavanah? It's about how do you merge them together. Whether you're merging it together because you're packing kavanah into traditional keva, or kind of like what you were saying before, that the schnapps story. It's like, can I make a new keva because that's the keva I need, and pack my kavanah there. It's like,
There's another example of this, which I just encountered. Most people in, good Shabbos.
you might want to put Marjorie Goldman back on your email list, if you remember her name.
Okay.
Or I'll tell you that later.
The famous story about Honi and his miracle with the rain. We love to quote that, but I found more interesting Shimon ben Shattach's response. And I read two different commentaries. One, the Art Scroll, which is a real condemnation of Honi, arrogance, ego, and all this. Then I read Ephraim Urbach's interpretation. This is two traditional, and he says, it talks about this movement that Honi was able to swing back and forth within the realm of doing things that Shimon ben Shattach, who was really the Nasi, the authority, did not agree with, but could not excommunicate. Within that realm of possibilities for bringing miracles, which Shimon did not believe in, he was the farthest thing from a mystic one could imagine, he was subtly saying, I can't go there. This doesn't work for me. But there are those who benefit from it. It's what you were saying about the Ana Elna, all right? I may not believe that I have any power of bringing down the power to heal. But for all those who can access, let them access. All right? Good Shabbos.
I think our intent, our kavanah to access is helpful. You know, it's like the wonderful thing about the web is that messages don't have to go through one way. Could you imagine this web of messages that are flowing? If this it doesn't allow it, there's another way around, and it finds its way, and so on and so forth. I think that's where we are in the moral homework. It is so hard to be able to say, I'm going down this road, I'm going down that road, because constantly all the other motivations, all these other things seem to be coming through and it's mobile. It's that, I want to say sof, you don't get any schar for anything but the act of will to say, at this point in the movement, I want to stop into this, I want to commit myself. We are not finished yet with the keva and kavanah and the commitment and the brit. All these things, these are wonderful conversations. Maybe we have them, God willing, as we continue. So
Can I just
I have an announcement to make.
Go.
Just something about Rosh Chodesh Av, because I didn't actually know it was the outside of Aaron Cohen, but it's also something that I'm really struggling with going into the 9 days. Martin Small, who's a member of my Kila, and many of you know, I think.
You wrote a beautiful email.
Right, I wrote an email about it, but it's Martin Small, for him, Rosh Chodesh Av is the day that his mother, father, and his 2 baby sisters were all murdered. Dafka on Rosh Chodesh Av. And so I'm kind of trying to bring this consciousness in the Kila. Like, how do we celebrate Rosh Chodesh as being like all about, Hitchut and